Hey everyone, this is Thyworm with a new build for last Epoch, the Spriggan Slapper. If you enjoy last Epoch content, consider subscribing. Let's start with the build philosophy. The Spriggan is a shape-shifting form, just like Werebear or Reaper form. Out of all the available forms, it's not often used, which is why I'm excited to bring a build for this. It is a build that is great when you've played a few characters, I would say, and want to try something totally different. As a starter build, this probably isn't an awesome idea as there are some gear requirements. Big shout out as well to Quiet For Me, who streams at twitch.tv/quietforme, as he's sort of a Spriggan master and provided me with a lot of great information. The Spriggan is basically a summoner and there are a few options. I went for big, scary, poisonous vines which slap the enemies in the face, and these things do a lot of damage. We are accompanied by another Spriggan and a pack of wolves. While shapeshifted, you cannot use regular skills, so you are rather limited as to what you can use, so we went with Ice Thorns for defense. Much later in the game, you can be a permanent Spriggan if you own a unique designed by Quiet For Me, the Legacy of the Quiet Forest, which has mana regeneration while in Spriggan form as a stat. Normally you don't regen mana, just like with Werebear, and as soon as you run out of mana, you transform back into human form. This unique is therefore vital to our build as it prevents this from happening. Some of the pros of the build: the Spriggan is very tanky, able to withstand a lot of damage due to natural defenses. It is a summoner playstyle, at least this build is, which I personally like. The damage output is very decent as well with the giant vines. And then some cons: there are no movement skills, which means you can get swarmed by enemies or are simply too slow to avoid an AoE attack. It's a pretty big drawback. It is a deceptively complex playstyle as well, because there are a lot of things you need to take into account. You get an entire new skill set in Spriggan form, you have to manage Spriggan and human form, you need to keep your companions alive, there's a lot to do. By the way, I'm streaming as well on twitch.tv/Thyworm every Monday, Thursday and Saturday, 8 PM Central European time. You can get a bunch of advice over there or in the Discord, so hop in. I'll help you out with any questions you might have. Let's see what the main stats are that you want. We're looking for attunement, minion melee damage, minion attack speed, and some protections. Attunement scales incredibly well with all of our skills and with the vines as well that you summon as a Spriggan. All our minions, including our vines, do melee damage, so both increased and added melee damage is very strong. The same goes for minion attack speed, and protections are easy to get as a primalist, so we're taking that route. Let's look at the passives. Take 8 out of 8 natural attunement for that attunement. Take 1 out of 6 gift of the wilderness and then go for other minion stats over here. 6 out of 6 primal medicine for minion damage, but mostly for that potion effect. And then take 5 out of 6 ancient call for added health, increased health and revival speed for companions. At later levels, come back here and take 5 out of 5 berserker for the damage reduction at low health, because that has saved me a few deaths for sure. We then move to druid to unlock the Spriggan. Take Soul's Attendant for mana and attunement, both are very useful. And I took 7 out of 8 Woodlore, as this is a very good defensive passive node. That gives you enough points to unlock the Spriggan form. For a mastery, we go Beastmaster, as it provides us a lot more benefits than the Druid mastery. Take 5 out of 8 Savagery for minion melee damage. Take the Boar Heart, granting the aspect of the boar, which provides 15% reduced damage taken, and enhance this with 5 out of 5 Porcine Constitution to bump that number up to 30%. Take 5 out of 5 Call of the Pack for health, companion health and healing when companions use an ability. This happens a lot for our wolves which howl. The Chase, 8 out of 8, is pretty amazing node for attack speed, movement and revive speed. It's underestimated, but revive speed is super important in arena, unless you're willing to let your companions die, which I am not in this build. 5 out of 5 Axe and Claw is added melee damage, pretty amazing. Our minions need some survivability just like us, so 10 out of 10 Hawkwing does a pretty good job here. And Avian Shelter, 10 out of 10, gets your minions to the glancing blow cap, which helps so much. My wolves survive high waves of arena for a long time after I completed this node. And finally take Force of Nature for another wolf. Skills are up next. We start with Spriggan form, of course. I started out to the left with 5 out of 5 thick tendrils, increasing vine damage, and then transformed those into great vines, giving them massive health, DPS and attack range. I would take 3 out of 4 tree sap step next, as this slows the enemies when they're hit with the vines, which ensures they remain in range for some additional slapping. As a Spriggan, you can summon totems as well, and those hurt, so take 5 out of 5 reinforced totem and then get to the spiked totem, turning the healing totems you'd normally summon into thorn totems. It uses the skill tree from thorn totems here, which is a great synergy. Finally, take defenses, pretty much mandatory. 5 out of 5 skin-like bark for 300 armor and protections. This makes you very tanky. We are a Spriggan, so we take a little Spriggan sister as well as a companion. The main purpose of this Spriggan is some CC because she casts Entangling Roots. Take 5 out of 8 Arboreal Vitality and then go for Biomancer to have her cast Entangling Roots, and then take 4 out of 4 Barbed Roots for increased damage. The Barbed Roots are not mandatory. You can take Duration or Spriggan Health instead, which might be the better choice. The same is true for the bottom left with 2 out of 8 Floral Ascendance, 2 out of 2 Veil Barrage and a Veil Assault. Your Spriggan pet casts a lot of green bolts, which really look cool, but it's not very effective. I appreciate the eye candy, however. Then our much more useful companions, the wolves. We got 4 of them. 1 from the unique amulet, the Fang, 1 from our mastery and 1 from a passive node. First, we make the wolves howl, granting attack speed buffs to everyone around them, including you and all the vines. Take 2 out of 5 on the hunt, just to get to 3 out of 3 Call of the Wind, just to get to 2 out of 2 Battle Cry. This node gives the wolves a 4% chance to cast howl when it hits a rare enemy or a boss. This seems like not much, but we have 4 wolves and this procs all the time, and it procs when we need it, when fighting strong enemies, a boss or a rare. That's why I didn't take Victory Howl and Snarl, because I don't need the howls after a kill, I want them during difficult fights. Instead, I went to summon more wolves, so I went 2 out of 5 Lupine Endurance, just to get to 3 out of 4 Wolven Recovery, which actually helps quite a bit this much regen. Take 3 out of 3 Earthborn for armor and health leech, and finally Pack Hunters, increasing the companion size once more. To help the wolves survive, I took 4 out of 4 Canine Agility, granting dodge. I mentioned it already, but the summon totem skill from Spriggan form makes use of the Thorn totem skill tree. We are taking the usual Forested Expanse, the Eternal Forest and the Grove Mind to summon 5 totems at once in a ring. We then invest in poison, so go 2 out of 5 Memories of Eterra and then take 5 out of 5 Venom Tipped Thorns for 100% poison chance. 3 out of 3 Lasting Affliction increases poison duration, and Nightshade Briar makes totems hit a poisoned enemy harder. I didn't go Poison Clouds as I like my frame rate as it is, which isn't all that great to begin with in this build. Our final point goes into Totemic Wisdom, reducing mana cost significantly. Our last skill is Ice Thorns because it can be cast when you're being hit, and there's really nothing else we can take in Spriggan form as you don't have access to other skills. So go 3 out of 4 Dagger Thorns just to get to 2 out of 2 Bramble Armor and a 4 out of 4 Spell Thorns. You now have a 40% chance to cast Ice Thorns when hit. We turn Ice Thorns into a defensive spell, so take 1 out of 3 Anemifully to get to Thorn Shield. This grants us armor and cold protection. We increase those numbers by taking 5 out of 5 Bark Shield, and we increase the duration by taking 3 out of 3 Eternal Protection. Our final point goes in Bulb Shield for the recast chance. Time to look at the gear. My gear is nothing special as usual, and everything can be found in the Tunklabs description. There are however 2 uniques that are required to pull this build off. The first is the Legacy of the Quiet Forest, which grants mana regen while in Spriggan form and a bunch of protections. This means that you can stay in Spriggan form permanently as long as you don't cast too many spells or summon too many vines. The other unique is the Fang, which allows you to summon wolves up to your companion limit. My companion limit is 5, so I can summon up to 5 wolves, and they're all howling. The Fang also provides a very decent amount of minion melee fizz damage, and minion stun immunity is actually huge. The rest of my gear are mostly defenses, making me glancing blow capped, giving me protections and a bunch of minion stats. Get some minion health, some minion dodge and minion damage. Attunement remains a big stat to invest into. The Pebble's Femur, a Necromancer wand, works really well for this build if you can get it, granting minions over 100% increased melee damage. Make sure you take turquoise rings for those additional minion stats. On to leveling, and you can level basically any way you want until you get to Spriggan form. It would make sense, however, to go with a few companions during leveling, as you would already collect gear that would benefit this build, but it is not required. As soon as you unlock Spriggan form, it becomes important that you get a bit of mana. During the campaign, you will be unable to sustain Spriggan form because the Legacy of the Quiet Forest isn't available until you reach level 50. You need to balance Spriggan form and human form, and the more mana you have, the longer you can stay in Spriggan form. Finally, the playstyle during endgame. Here's the build in action. There's actually a lot of stuff to take into account. Most importantly, your own mana. You need to know when you're about to transform back into human form, so that doesn't surprise you. You need to manage your mana ideally so you don't transform back at all in late game. You can make use of a few skills in Spriggan form. There's the root wall, which taunts enemies. It's rather useful, especially combined with a few great vines. The root taunts enemies and the vines slap those enemies. The vines have their own aggro range as well, especially if they're off screen. They lure enemies and once again slap them. Summon healing totems actually summons thorn totems, and because of the poison mechanic, even without investing anything in damage over time, these things do a lot of damage, especially when summoned around a boss. Don't use the right mouse button ever. During the campaign, you just run around planting vines. In the arena, you need to combine your different skills to be able to survive. Taunt when needed, group them up and plant vines, and of course dodge attacks and stay safe yourself. You need to take care of your companions as well. Move them away from poison and void spikes using A. Use them wisely because they're very valuable. Your wolves really buff up everything when it matters most, including the thorn totems. And thorn totems with attack speed is pretty ridiculous, and it kills the toughest of monsters fast. The Spriggan is definitely something completely different, and despite its unconventional playstyle, it might be something you enjoy. It is certainly an undervalued character. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have fun with the build and that the guide was useful. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. See you all soon. Bye bye.